Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Thank you so much for joining Zoom In with Renee. Today, my guest is Deepa Purohit. She's a playwright and a theater actress known for her plays, including Sex and the City, One Life to Live, and The War Within. Today, I'm going to be talking to Deepa about her new play, Elyria, which is an off-Broadway production. It's going to be at the Atlantic Theater Company at the Linda Gross Theater through March 19th. And this is at West 20th Street in Manhattan, New York City. Deepa is a member of the Maui Writers Lab and a co-founder of the Rising Circle Theater Collective, which showcases the unheard stories of communities of color in the United States. Thank you, Deepa, for joining.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk about Elyria, my play. Elyria is actually the name of my hometown in Ohio. I mean, I have been in New York and lived in New York for over 25 years, but the place where I grew up, where my parents moved to when I was young, and settled there, was in this town of Elyria, Ohio. So this play is really about a group of people in this town, not the whole town, but actually what I often say is a village, a small village of people in this town who are Indian immigrants, and that they are from a Gujarati community from the state of Gujarat, and they've traveled many miles to come to the West. In this play takes place in 1982, so they traveled over via East Africa, which is similar to the trajectory of my parents and my grandparents, who settled in East Africa from India and then traveled to the UK for a little while, settled there, but then found that there was opportunity here in the United States and settled in a small town in America. So this play is really about a group of people who have either settled or have just moved to a new town, and how they reconcile with each other. They knew each other in their past lives in a different continent, a different country, and they've come together again by chance, and what they have to reckon with when they do come together and see each other once again 20 years after they last saw each other. And it's focused on two women and their families.
So it's Vandana and Data.
Vasanta and Data, yes.
Yes, Vasanta and Data. And they meet after 20 years, so it's like they met in college, Navratri, and then 20 years later, you're talking about the raveling the knots from the past and then how they link to the future, because all of us carry so much of what we have gone through with our experiences, and they are embedded in our subconscious, and they will come out in the way we live our lives. Is it also something autobiographical in many, many ways for you?
The story itself really isn't, but the migration of the people really is. And also the town where they live, it's the town I grew up in, so there are references. In that they are there in the 80s, which is a time when we settled in that town. So there are pieces that come from my family's story and many of the people in my family that I have kind of drawn on to inspire the story of these two characters. But it's not autobiographical in that it's my story. It's the story of so many people that has then woven themselves into this particular imagined story of these two women.
Yeah, so it can resonate with a lot of us, people who migrate to different countries. I think most immigrants would feel like, hey, I can connect to this.
What does it feel like to fall in love?
The role of dance in your play. Dance can play a very, very important role, and you have Garba And you Garba, you're clapping and then you're turning around and you're going forward. So it's like one step backward, two steps forward. And does that have a lot of significance, different layers of meaning?
Oh, yes. I mean, I grew up doing Garba, this traditional folk dance in our town in Elyria. My parents actually, with a group of people, organized a Navratri celebration every year in a YWCA in downtown Elyria, where a group of us Gujaratis would get together. People from our town, people from the greater Cleveland area would come. And during that time, we'd all celebrate. Now, so that's inspiration. And then the actual folk dance and its actual form, that you dance in a circle with Ras, which is a part of the Garba night. You dance with sticks in concentric circles and you meet different partners along the way. And then you come back together with your original partner if you make full circle around with your Ras partner. So there's some metaphorical meaning there in that the circle kind of comes back. You reunite with people that you've been through the circle with before with Ras. And with Garba, the 2 steps forward and 1 step back is sort of, in a way, and moving in a circle is sort of the way that many immigrants come to this country. They go forward and they look back at their home country, or sometimes it's difficult to settle. So you made it to this land that you wanted to get to, but there's so many struggles to get settled, and you might feel like you're moving backwards when you're trying to settle into a new place. So there's many connotations that are inspired from this particular dance that has this formation, and that's very repetitive also. So you're going in a circle, you're doing the same movements, you're the same beats, and then you might change it up. There might be a variation of it, and then, or there might be a different rhythmic sequence, and people are still moving in a circle. So even if things change, the circle stays the same. Sometimes the circle gets larger. Sometimes people move to the center circle to move faster. So there's lots of things within the element of Garba folk dance that are really about, patterns in life, really. And I think that's why it's such an attractive community dance, because everybody can get involved, and everybody, no matter what your ability is, no matter what your age is, no matter who you are, you get involved. And the last thing I'll say, what's interesting about having a play inspired by this particular dance in a theater is that theater is also like that. We gather in community with people live, with a live audience, and there's talking and there's dancing and there's singing or whatever it might be in that play, but we're engaging with the performance of it, but we're witnessing it. And I think the difference with Garba is that everyone can be a participant, whereas in theater, everybody is a participant, but everybody has particular roles. Audience has a role, actors have a role, creators have a role. So, we can kind of draw some parallels with community gathering here.
Right. And it can also be intergenerational when you're looking at the past.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe at your past or your childhood, or your mom, your grandmom, and then looking forward for your next generation. So could be having so many layers, and I think the audience can interpret it their way as well, besides the meanings that we have out here, because that's what art is all about. And your husband is in the play as well, Sanjay.
He is, yes. He's been acting in New York for 20 years. He's worked in theater, he's worked in television and film, and he is also a writer. We both have co-written a few pieces together, and we actually ran a theater company together for a little while. So we've collaborated artistically, although this is the first time this is a piece that we haven't co-written that we're collaborating on. So I've written it and he's acting in it. And this is a new kind of combination of our artistic partnership together. And it's been really exciting.
Now, your plays and your writings, your pieces are very female-centric.
Yeah.
Right. So is it about, there are issues about empowerment, about identity?
I mean, I think it's about all of that, but honestly, like selfishly, it's just about wanting to see people whose experiences are similar to mine or different from mine, more proliferated in theater storytelling. So when you have women as the central protagonists, and in this case, what my attempt is to have two women, you're sort of breaking some of these rules where we see a male protagonist, potentially even in America, like a white male protagonist, really drive the story. And for me, I mean, if I look at my life, I'm the one driving my story. Nobody else is. Yes, there are lots of other players. So in a way, it's reflective of a kind of experience that I'm having, which is what are the things that I'm navigating in the body that I have and the identity that I have that's interesting for me to see in a number of stories that might not be exactly like mine, but might be people who are from the South Asian diaspora who may have similar experiences or even different experiences from the ones that I have.
Now you've also moved on, not just on South Asian voices, communities of color, and bringing their stories to the fore as well. And problems could be that they are challenged with. So are you bringing those in the plays as well now?
Yeah, so my company, we actually, I ran it for 12 years, but we actually—
At the Rising Circle Theater Company?
Yes, right. And to focus more on my writing, I actually left the company and it did close up a few years ago. But we ran it for 12 years where we were really interested in not just— I didn't want to just tell my story. I was interested in creating a forum or artistic home for people of color whose stories, they didn't see their own stories, just like me going up on stage. So we actually fostered a lot of environment for people to tell their stories. And that is actually very, very important to me. One aside is actually people who have seen this play have come up to me, a number of people. And I find it, okay, I have done something successful when someone says, you know what, I saw this story and I really want to find out about my own family's stories and histories. And that to me is very important, more so than even, I need to know more about South Asian stories. Yes, that's great. There are lots of people that do need to do that. But if you go to the theater and you get inspired to tell your own story, no matter who you are, I think that is very, very important. I would say the other thing about different communities of storytelling, recently I was commissioned with my husband to co-write a piece by the People's Light Theater Company that really took place in Eastern Pennsylvania, a place that we didn't know. And we began to discover various communities there, both immigrant communities from Guatemala and Central America, indigenous communities that have been displaced, South Asian communities coming over to work in the sort of pharmaceutical and tech industries there in Eastern Pennsylvania. And we were really thinking a lot about, and local Black communities that have been rooted there for many years that have, came up through the Great Migration. So we became very interested in the intersection of these communities. How do they intersect with one another? What are the clashes that happen? What are the alliances that happen when you're in a larger community? So in Elyria, I'm really looking at a very insular Gujarati community. But in this piece, which is entitled Crushed Earth, we're looking at what happens in a particular geographical area when communities who have very different interests intersect with one another, and how do they find connections also what sort of draws them apart, what distances them, because we're still in an America where communities are fairly segregated. Rarely do you find places that are extremely mixed. Queens is an example of a place that has many different people from all over the world intersecting, but those people are also, many of our folks are actually in your own insular communities because you share language, you share customs, food, things that are important to religious practice that are important to share with people who are alike. But you're residing in a place where lots of people with different things are going to the same grocery store or going to the same hospital, are intersecting there. So that is actually very, very interesting to me, this insularity and also these public spaces that we intersect and actually connect, even working together in different organizations.
It can be sometimes challenging to have a story that's gripping. It could be a local story, but it kind of has a very universal appeal. But to make it so riveting, at times it can be challenging for a playwright. What do you think?
Yeah, I think usually the rule for me as a playwright is, if I really tell the story from a truth, if I really take the process to find what is the truth that these characters are living, I'm less concerned about, especially in the inception and the creation of it, whether it's gripping or not, whether the truth telling is happening. And when the truth telling is really working, I think it becomes very gripping. I think it becomes, people hear and feel truth and they become very interested and they become very involved. But if it's for the sake of getting people interested and involved versus for the sake of the characters who are in the story, then I think it might not do the part. You really have to start, what is the story that I want to tell? Who are the people in the story and why do they do the things that they do? And that becomes interesting. And if we craft it in an interesting and engaging way, I think that's what grips the audience, and how specific you can get. Because what I've found is that even though this story is about a Gujarati community, small community of Gujarati people from so many different places have come up to me. I have a close friend who took a trip to Jamaica recently, right? And she saw the show and she was going to go. And she said to me, I'm going to go and I'm going to find my family stories. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And I think that to me is the power of cultural specificity. It actually opens doors to people who are different from you to find the thing that they want to find or find the similarities.
Absolutely, because you always find some commonality with every community, and you can connect and resonate with it, whatever theme you have, because if it's put out in an honest way, and it will attract everybody. And your audience doesn't have to be just community of color. It could be any community. So stories that are relatable will always become gripping. What has been the reviews so far with the play? Elyria?
So sweet, but I would say the most important reviews are the audience reviews when I leave the theater. And I've had people say things, as I was mentioning about my friend, I've had people say their hearts were moved and that they felt it was something that touched them very personally. And these are folks that might not have even known that this group of Gujaratis existed in Elyria, and many people who did not know there was a town called Elyria in Ohio. And some people thought it was an imagined town. So I'll have people come up to me and say, so where is this? What is Elyria? I said, that's my hometown. It's where I grew up, where I had my childhood.
Would you like to take this play to Elyria itself, to the city?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it would be great to bring it to Ohio. I don't know,
like a great full circle.
I know. I don't know if they actually have a theater there, but I do know the Lorain County Community College has a lovely theater, and they used to. And of course, to Cleveland, to the Cleveland area. Also, much of the references I have is not just actually in Elyria, but with the Gujarati community, we spanned across the Cleveland area. So there were people from different towns across Cleveland and around Cleveland coming together for these Navratri celebrations. It wasn't just Gujaratis living in Elyria. So yeah, it would be wonderful to take it back to Ohio and see how people responded there.
I'm sure they will really like it because you're kind of your roots where you grew up.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're coming up with something new this summer as well.
I have, yes. So this commission that I was speaking of with the People's Light Theater, what we decided is the play is called Crushed Earth. And last summer we were People's Light decided to produce an audio play version, which means that you would be listening to it almost like a radio play in July. However, we had some snafus with some COVID stuff with some of the staff and folks involved. So we had to postpone it. So we're hoping this summer we will be recording this play, and then People's Light will be distributing it. And hopefully people will get a chance to take a listen, and we'll get a wider audience, because it's not just the folks coming to the theater, but really people can listen to it online and really hear the story. So I'm excited about it. I've never done an audio play before. It's a very different type of situation, but it's another way of dramatic storytelling, which is extremely exciting.
And where can one then see this audio play? I mean, it's just audio, so is it going to be?
Yeah, so People's Light, what we'll do is we'll record it, and they will probably release it in the late summer. So if you got on People's Light Theater mailing list, they would probably have something in the late summer alerting people to the distribution of the audio play.
That's wonderful. Where do you see yourself as a playwright and as an actress in the next 5 years?
I would love to get more of my plays. I've written a number of them, and I would love to get more of them produced in New York and also around the country. I do see myself, hopefully, I'm very interested, and I grew up watching television, watching film. So I'm interested in embarking on learning what that dramatic storytelling looks like. And I'm hoping that between that, I'm actually I'm always exploring other art forms in my own, just what art forms actually influence my writing. So in 5 years, who knows? I hope the space opens wide and there are lots of possibilities, but I continue to practice writing and learn how to be a better dramatic writing storyteller.
Well, thank you very much, Deepa Purohit, playwright, theater actress with her new play, Elyria. It's going to go on through March 19th at the Atlantic Theater Company off-Broadway show at Linda Gross Theater. And I hope everybody joins in, because the story is so relatable and it can resonate with all of us. So thank you so much, Deepa, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you. To you too.
Thank you.
And
I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.